Hi students, the previous classes we have learned about the nervous system of a human body and how does this nervous carry the impulses, how does this control and coordination system take place in a human body. So the components, the organs that involved in that process is brain, spinal cord and nervous tissues. And now we are going to discuss about the one of the component which is the center of the control and coordination process, that is human brain. So the main function of brain, as we already said during the control and coordination process, is a thinking process. This thinking process involves more complex mechanism and neural connections, and these all connections and the complex mechanism are concentrated in the brain. So brain is constantly receiving the information from the various parts of the receptor cells of the body, and they analyze these informations and give the right information back to the effector organ so that the effector organ acts according to the direction of the human brain. And this is a very complex mechanism and very complex process. Our every actions like walking, writing, talking and everything is controlled by this brain. That means it involves the thinking process, and this thinking process is controlled by the brain, and the brain has various parts in order to coordinate these all functions. The brain broadly we can classify it into three regions. They are forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. So all the neurons that coming from the various receptor cells of the human body, they receives the region of forebrain, and they constantly accept or receive the informations from the various parts of the body, and then they process these informations. Sensory impulses are there. These impulses reach the brain, the forebrain. Separated areas for the forebrain are specialized for hearing, smelling, sight and so on. So these informations that are received from the sensory organs or sensory receptors, then they are processed by these various regions of the brain, and also they compared with the informations already been stored in the brain, and based on all these informations, and the brain decide how to react towards a stimulus. Then these informations then pass to the motor areas which control the movement of voluntary actions. For example, to our leg muscles or muscles on our hands. However, certain actions are distinct from seeing or hearing. For example, how do we know that we have eaten enough? And this sensation of feeling full, and which is associated with the another part of the forebrain. Let us see the another word that we have already discussed in the previous session, that is reflex. So our body responds to the many stimulus which are reflex actions. That means an action has been taking place suddenly without the process of thinking involved, and in this process action spinal cord is involved than the brain, and these reflex actions, mostly the involuntary actions, are controlled by another part of the brain. And for example, moving a chair, and again changing the size of the pupil and blinking of eye. And this all involves another set of muscles that do not involve any thinking process. Many of these involuntary actions are controlled by the midbrain and the hindbrain. All these involuntary actions including salivation, heartbeat, blood pressure. This is all controlled by the medulla of the hindbrain. Thinking about walking in a straight line, riding a bicycle, and maintaining the body balance and posture of the body, and this is all controlled by the hindbrain. So from this all examples and the discussions, we have already come to know that these components of the nervous system, that is brain, spinal cord and nervous system, all are delicate organs. So they need to be protected very carefully. And how does this protection done by the body? So we know that brain is a very delicate organ, and all our control and coordination process is concentrated on the brain. And if any damage happen to the brain, and it is going to affect the entire process of control and coordination of the body, of the organism. So therefore, brain is well protected by a skull, a bony box called skull, and it consists of filled with a fluid. It provides a balloon structure, and which floats on this fluid, so it absorbs the further shocks also from the brain to the waist of our body. Then a rigid back support we can feel, and which is called vertebral column. And the spinal cord is run along the vertebral column, so it is protected by the skeletal column called vertebral column. These two organs are protected by the body. And then how does these tissues are protected? And we have seen that so much actions are taking place in the body. And how do these cells always change their size and shape in order when they are involved in an action? For example, when we stretch our hands and when we withdraw our hands. So a lot of muscles are involved in these actions. And how does this contraction and relaxation of the muscles take place? And this is carried out by a chemical reactions. Our cells consist of especially proteins, and these proteins changes the size and shapes of size of the muscles. So it changes the arrangement of cells, and so that the size and shape of the cells are changed. So we have seen that different kinds of muscles we have in our body, and you have already learned the previous class, class 9. So by changing this chemical reaction of the proteins present in the cells is responsible for the change in the arrangement of cells, and this change in the arrangement then leads to the change in size and shape of the cells. And this is all about human brain.